We're live. Welcome to the Real Virtual Show, guys. I am your host, Malia Probst. I am joined today by my esteemed, illustrious, and disgustingly handsome guest co-host, Kuldeep Dosanjh, CEO of Fortis Health. He is at Fortis Health. Deep, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me on here.
I appreciate you being here. And our lovely guest today is named Josh Farkas. He is the CEO of Chicago-based design firm Cubicle Ninjas. And Josh, you're building quite a few apps in virtual reality. You're doing great stuff, and I want to pick your brain and find out all about it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
First, I'm going to shut the phone off. So we're good. Thank you for being here, guys. I appreciate it, and we are going to dive right in. So as I mentioned in our lovely intro, Josh is the CEO of Cubicle Ninjas, and you guys are located in Chicago, correct, Josh?
Yeah, we're out in the suburbs, about 40 minutes out of the main city.
Nice. So, I mean, Cubicle Ninjas, I love the name.
What cool name.
It's a really good name. Let us get a little bit of context on you. Who are the Cubicle Ninjas? What are the Cubicle Ninjas? Who are you? And let us know just a little slice of life.
Absolutely. So about I originally started off as a kids book illustrator and did the design agency thing for a long time. And one of the things that like always bugged me was that agencies kind of felt like these cold, heartless things. And so what I wanted to do is when we started Cubicle Ninjas was to kind of come at it from a different direction and work with people who loved what they did, who wanted to do it because they cared and enjoyed and woke up every day passionate about creating cool stuff. So the Cubicle Ninjas, that's our entire goal and mantra. So what's been awesome is we've been able to do that in all these different areas. And for us, VR is kind of that next platform. We see our ability to kind of apply our passion and creativity and unique point of view to this framework.
So what other stuff? So now you're just kind of starting to delve in the virtual reality and augmented spaces. So what kind of stuff have you guys produced in the past, Josh?
Yeah, so we work a lot with different organizations. So we've done major campaigns for American Express and JP Morgan. We've done campaigns for Justin Bieber and Black Sabbath. Some of those things range from web apps to mobile apps. We've done a lot of branding work. So we do branding, video, kind of print design, and application, both web and mobile application development. So we kind of do everything. And so it becomes really challenging when people go, what do you do? It's like, what don't we do? It's a little easier. So
totally.
So, yeah.
You're the ninjas. You're the ninjas.
We are. Yeah.
Can I jump in with a question, Malia, actually?
Please.
So what proportion of your portfolio is focused on VR, virtual reality, or AR, whatever one you're mainly focused on?
That's an awesome question. So what's funny is we're always looking for new areas to explore, like different lines. We call them pillars. And so a year ago, I would say maybe 5% of our business was originally focused on VR and AR. This year, I could say about 25% of all of our business is virtual reality. And next year looks to be even higher. I mean, we're having conversations now, which frankly blow my mind in terms of like how lucky we are to be at this moment in time. And I'm obsessed with like early computing and like the internet and back when like people were doing these things for the first time. What's crazy is it kind of feels like that. It feels like this is our homebrew computer club to be able to be there and like have a say in how a medium is formed. So it's a blast.
Right on. So there on Blab, there are a lot of creatives. There are a lot of entrepreneurs.
Cool.
And it's so everything that you said about what you've done in the past and what Cubicle Ninjas do now and what you guys are looking to do in the future, it's a very, very creative background. You've mentioned illustrator, graphic novel, creator and publisher, creative design and development. So how did these skills and experiences kind of lead you to virtual reality and why virtual reality?
I think, as people who love to build things, I feel like everything's been a slow stepping stone up to VR. In that if you look at illustration or, you have kind of this flat 2D medium, it takes a lot of effort and time, but at the end of the result, it's a static piece. Websites, motion, they're the same concept with a little bit more interactivity, a little bit more audio, but they're still they're mediums that you look at and they're not mediums you're fully immersed in.
Right.
VR and AR are kind of like the end. They're really the dream. Like they're the dream we've all been waiting for. And so I've never, when I watch a movie, you know, I might feel into it for moments, but I don't feel like I'm in the movie. And so for us to be able to build creations and to put people in them and walk out and not walk away with, I liked when you did this, but I liked when I experienced this, like walk away with memories. I think that for me it's the ultimate platform.
Malia, I just want to jump in and say how refreshing it is when you meet people that are so passionate about what they do. I mean, it's very rare and it's few and far between, but it's great to see people that are passionate about their industry and what they do. And it's essentially why I ended up doing what I was doing and my business, because it's, you know, it's a passion. It's salute you, Josh. It's good. It's good to see, and it's good to see that you're so passionate about what you do.
And same to you. I guess, you know, I worked so long for people who didn't care about what they did. I don't want to spend another day. It's like another day. I want to wake up each day and do what I love and work with people who care, you know, so totally understand.
Absolutely.
Part of the reason why I thought that Deep was such a good match for this conversation was that, so he's the CEO of Fortis Health, which is a health supplement company, and so some of the content that you're creating in virtual reality is very health and wellness focused. So one of the things that you're working on is called guided meditation. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So guided meditation VR is kind of like a virtual vacation that you can carry with you. So one of the biggest challenges, if we take a look at, in the US as an example, 50% of people don't take their vacation by like September. And so the amount of like overwork, the amount of stress that adds to our lives, if we take a look at Europe, for example, you know, 2-3 months worth of like vacations. And so this kind of puts all this pressure on people's lives. They never really do have a chance to decouple. So we've built these institutionalized places like Starbucks or these other places where people can go to escape for 5 minutes at a time. For us, the hope is for the person who never takes a vacation or the mom who has 3 kids and doesn't have that chance, if they can for 5 minutes just toss on a wacky little hat like this and go to another world to take a breather, we think that not only is going to change, you know, people's lives, but we think it's going to have a chance to make all the other 80 hours of that week worth it. So that's what we're exploring. We think it's great for people, but we also think for healthcare, like actual, you know, usage in your home, we think is going to be huge. But we also think, you know, if you go to a doctor and you're really nervous about it, or you're about to undergo surgery, do we have to be using all of these medications? Is there a way that we can tap into the natural, you know, brain psychology that we already know and kind of augment things and kind of make it so that there's a natural approach to this? So
that's awesome. So Josh, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Please.
So the idea of switching off, you know, the guy that works 80-hour weeks, and I've been there before, and it's horrible, right? My kind of switching off, my way of achieving my Zen is to literally turn tech off for a little while, right?
Exactly.
The idea of having a phone near me, you know, I'll switch it all off. I want to go, I want to disappear. And I'll take a weekend away to the Lake District or the New Forest in Southampton or whatever, and that will just completely recharge. So what are your thoughts around that and how virtual can fit into that? Can it be a replacement for that, or can it add to it? What do you think?
I absolutely do. And I think the problem is experiences right now, they take a lot of time and money. And so a good example is in that scenario, for you to detach, you had to travel somewhere, you had to pay money, you had to have the ability to not work during that period of time. And those are things that are really exclusive. You know, they're not many people have those. So I do. I also think the other thing is VR gets a real bad rap for being exclusion, like that you have to shut off the real world. And people think that's a horrible thing. Like, oh, why would you should go out into the world. You should see these things. That's absolutely true. And that's a valid concern. But we can use that perceived negative as a positive. And so, you know, yes, VR shuts off the world. So you can't receive a text. You can't watch your favorite TV show. You have nothing to do but experience and relax. So that's the hope. But I think it's a valid point. And I don't think VR is ever going to replace those things. It's just going to augment them and allow you to do it right now for very little cost. So.
Love it. So why there are so many ways that virtual reality is helping people in different industries. We've heard a lot about video games. We're hearing a lot about entertainment. We're hearing a lot about practical applications. And so, and also we can touch upon this a bit in a moment if you like, but your virtual tourism applications as well. But going along with the guided meditation one specifically, I found this to be such an amazing addition to everything else that I've already seen and heard and wondered about in virtual reality. So why did you take that approach? What is kind of like your personal experience with meditation, and where was that moment? Where was that moment where you said, this is a great thing to bring into virtual reality?
Yeah. Well, just to be perfectly honest, I mean, I think we live in a society that doesn't talk enough about mental health. And I think a lot of the things that we see as runoffs are problems with us not dealing this directly. So in my life, I've suffered from bipolar and depression for forever. And there were points in my life where, it was very, very serious. And even just to be perfectly frank, I've been pushed to the moments where I wasn't sure I might take my own life in certain situations. And so the reason is I think we don't have enough structures in place to be able to, we have, hey, you can go to therapy or you can go take some medicine. And there's nothing that can be, there's nothing that can help is in between those 2 points. And so for me with guided meditation VR, our hope has always been that there can be a way for people to kind of experience this without those in-betweens. And one good example is like the Army. So we went last year to an Army trade show, or technically it's Army, Navy, Air Force. And we went there. And one good example of that audience is, on average, it takes 2 months for a person who's in the armed forces for when they request therapy, for that therapy to be granted. And that's simply too long. And so every day, dozens of people are dying because of PTSD. And so if we can have a solution that's in place that allows people to kind of at least start to go through some cognitive behavior therapy, experience some relaxation, help them in their most urgent time and not 3 months later, I think that would be really valuable. And if I look at my life personally, I have friends and relatives and everybody who's in pain and need and aren't willing to take those extra steps. So I'm hopeful VR can be that path.
Beautiful. So I've been hearing about some games that are coming out in virtual reality that are almost called meditative experiences. And one of them that's on the horizon is called Land's End. And the way these games are designed, the way they flow, they're very slow, they're very purposeful, and they've been described as being meditative experiences. Is that far out there? Can a video game be made relaxing? And in a larger context, can we gamify relaxation?
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting question. That's one we've been struggling with this whole time. If you take a look at video games and then think about the most relaxing video game you've ever played, the overlap is actually really fairly minor. You could look at things like Flower or maybe a puzzle game that had you really focused. So because I almost think relaxation is kind of the absence of things to do, and games are distraction. They're play. They're very much things to do. So in my personal opinion, I mean, I think we're trying to find that balance of giving you enough things to do, but allowing you to kind of experience the meditative state in between. So yeah, but as far as, I just think they're different. They're two sides of the same coin. But I think looking at something like Land's End or other platforms, absolutely. There's no reason games can't become the new, the new Zen mantra or something. So,
I'm not sure where Malia's gone, but I think we'll just carry on there, because gaming for many people is escapism, and escapism is exactly what people are looking for. And even meditation is also escapism, right? And everything we talked about before.
Yeah.
So if you can, because the reason why, well, in my opinion, the iPhone, the smartphones were so disruptive, it's because you were able to use them within your life. You didn't have to stop everything, right?
Totally.
So exactly what you said before, when the guy that's working 80 hours is able to use virtual reality within his life and in his lifestyle. It's the same concept as the iPhone. So my first initial thoughts when people were talking about virtual reality was, Well, first thing, they've tried it already, right? It's been going around since the 90s.
Sure.
Then the second thing was you have to kind of stop. You have to put the headset on, and then you have to connect it to a computer as well, I think. I think that's my understanding of it. And my initial thoughts were, you can't use this on the go. So how's it going to fit into my lifestyle? But
Yeah.
I think as a form of escapism is definitely one area which it will add to people's lives, and where you don't have to kind of stop everything that you do. It can be incorporated, as opposed to adding new time to your day to do the whole virtual reality thing.
And I think, and just to your point on virtual reality, there are some headsets that do require a PC and a wire and those sorts of things. But this is the Gear VR. So it's a tiny little thing. A cell phone slides into it. And
show it to us, would you mind?
yeah, absolutely. So this is the Gear, and a cell phone. I think I've got one over here. But a cell phone just slides into the very end. So it's officially launching. I believe tomorrow is the official launch day. And so
Tomorrow's
what's amazing about
20th,
this?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is $99. You can slide a phone in if you have a Samsung phone in from 2015. And then you can have this on the go or toss it in your bag. Yesterday, we brought it out, and it will amaze people. It will blow people's minds. And this is just the first generation of consumer tech. So the hope is, you could have this in, your living room and just pass it around the family and spend 5-10 minutes just to take a breather. So hopefully
it's affordable as well. So for $99, gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah, and so I think there's a perception of what VR was, and I think you're right. There's still definitely that option, but it's changing, and so that's the hope. Is like as it changes, can we get in and during that time change people's expectations of what this medium and experience could be?
So I have a quick question, actually, Millie, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Please, absolutely.
You started me talking now, so you have to.
Good.
You have to
I'm just
stop
going to I'm going to sit back and relax. I'm going to
I was reading an interview with one of the co-founders of Oculus Rift, and was it Palmer Luckey? Is that right? Is that the name?
Yeah.
So, and the kind of consensus was that virtual reality for the next 3 to 4 years, possibly 5 years, is going to mainly be for gamers and real enthusiasts and people that are like real early adopters. So do you think a general business like, I'm the CEO of Fortis Health, my business is doing well, I focus a lot on social, on Instagram, on Pinterest, I'm doing well from there, I do Facebook advertising, and well on that side. Would you as somebody, as a virtual reality guy, would you recommend a small business allocating a small proportion of their spend on virtual reality, or putting it in their portfolio for the next 5 years, or what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah,
because there's actually a lot of business people on Blab and like in this space as well. So I do a lot of business talks, and a lot of people are kind of interested in that field.
I mean, as Cubicle Ninjas, as developers of apps, if you're looking to kind of get attention to what the work that you're doing and kind of call it out in a different way, especially to differentiate yourself. I mean, that's the big key. Like you go to a show, you want to show people why you're unique. And so VR is a really cool way to do that. I think the key is creating VR experiences that add value and aren't just VR as a thing. Like, oh, you cool, we made it in VR. Well, who cares? Like if it's not an interesting story as a book or a movie, why would it matter? So absolutely. We're working with tons of different types of businesses that you wouldn't think would have a VR component that you can actually make a really compelling, awesome experience. So it's just finding that story that might stand out for you, if especially for trade shows or just to get noticed. So
I want to pop in a quick comment to that about how companies are getting attention, and then we're going to jump to this question from Rubik down there. Going along how companies are getting attention and perhaps getting more followers, fans, friends, really. Lexus, for example, just did some branded content. And along with that branded content, they also made a custom virtual reality cardboard headset. That was really nice cardboard, really soft, the kind that Apple uses, so it's that kind of luxury feel. So it was branded to Lexus, this beautiful kind of luxury type of cardboard headset. And then the content itself was then put on the stores to be able to download. So on Google Play and iOS, I believe it's available on both. Regardless, this is a piece of advertising. And almost instantaneously, there are 100,000 downloads of that Lexus branded experience. So that means 100,000 people volunteered, raised their hands to go sit in a virtual driver's seat of a Lexus and, quite honestly, jump into a billboard for 3 to 4 minutes and said, yes, I am going to actually immerse myself in Lexus voluntarily. That kind of advertising is almost invaluable.
It's great content as well, right? You put at the cutting edge of technology, and it's storytelling. It is storytelling.
Yeah,
absolutely. I want to jump on this question real quick. So Rubik asked, Josh, if you will allow people to create their own relaxation place in the future. Is that something that has ever occurred to you? Perhaps you see that on the roadmap down a ways?
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks, Ru, for the question. So I think that's a really good question. So one of the things that we learned very quickly was that relaxation spaces and meditation spaces are really personal, and that they, like, one thing that we kept finding over and over is, for example, if I'm from California, I actually don't want to go to a beach. I never want to go to a beach. Like, I've done beaches. I'm good. I want to go to the mountains. I want to go underwater. And so, like, yet for me, for the Midwest, I'll hang out on a beach all day. So, what we found is that a highly curated, designed by an artist experience, and that we just need multiple options. So will you be able to create your own spaces? No, but you will be able to take our existing spaces, and we'll have tons of them and modify them. And so an example is, for beaches, we have 5 different beaches, and you can choose your time of day. You can choose what is it, sunset? Is it cloudy? Is it raining? Is it snowing on the beach? You can make all that stuff happen. So we're kind of trying to give these levers so you can pull, and yet not make it like a Minecraft, or get into the spaces where some of those awesome people are building, create your own, applications, which are cool, but we don't think is our strength. So.
All right.
That's cool.
So what you're focusing
question,
on?
Actually.
Absolutely.
Do you want to
jump on Indeed?
Why now? Why not the mid-90s? We touched on this earlier. We've been here before. Maybe it's going to be the same again, and then it's going to nobody's going to hear about it in the next few years. And this is a genuine question that a lot of people, I think, have that aren't really in the VR space.
I think you're right.
I've touched on it and heard about it. So what do you think? Why now?
I think if anybody tried VR back in the day, they would know that everybody thinks VR is a really cool idea, but if you tried it back in the day, it was awful. Like I tried Disney Quest. I was like a 12-year-old kid. I got to fly on Aladdin's carpet. And then afterwards I wanted to throw up for about 2 days. So I think the why now is, like, a cell phone can actually deliver this and make you feel like you're really there. And a good example of that is, like, earlier, I'm a big believer of dog fooding. Like, we need to use our product. We need to understand our product. And if we don't, then, like, something's wrong. So early this year, just in full confession, I used to give blood every single year, right? And then one year I woke up while giving blood, and I saw the needle in my arm, and I kept passing out, waking up over and over again. So for the past 5 or 6 years, I haven't been able to go into a doctor's office without basically hyperventilating. And so I've passed out. The last time I went to a doctor's office before, I passed out and I woke up with 2 nurses holding my feet above my head. So, like, it's funny because it's this crazy, weird thing that, like, I'm no longer...
It does not sound fun at all.
It's horrible. It's horrible. So I avoid doctors and all these things. So the only reason I say that, why now? Well, what I did this year was we took our application and I went in and I threw it on my face and I hung out at a beach and I walked through just a breathing exercise. And for the first time in 5 or so years, I didn't pass out. I was able to go. So why now? The tech is ready. It's portable. It's cheap. And we can make really cool experiences. So
that's a great answer. That's brilliant.
We have a great question here from Darwin. He wants to know if there's any research being done in clinical settings related to VR benefits for stress, pain management, anxiety, and I'll take that a bit further. We're definitely on the right track there. There are quite a few applications being developed and have been being developed for quite some time in that space for the treatment of PTSD, phobias, and actual mental illnesses as well. Are you familiar with any of those works, and were you maybe inspired by any of those, Josh?
Yeah, the for us the inspiration was old school vision of VR. So we, looking back at 1990 and seeing like there were like 3 polygons of a park and going like, or Total Recall or something like that's the science fiction really inspired us. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the clinical, tests that are being done, there's more research than I think anybody really has an understanding of. Like there's a couple groups where there's like literally 500 different research topics that have or different tests that have happened that prove the value in different ways. And this was with old VR, like bad VR, like VR that would make you sick. Now modern VR, it's bound to have better benefits. So on our side, we're doing tests as well, but there are a ton of really cool people out there who are looking into phobias, who are looking into fear of heights, who are looking into fear of speaking, and they're not only are they releasing products, but they're doing tests as well. So I would imagine in the next year we're going to see just a flood of research coming out of the actual real world data examples of how this stuff can better people's lives.
Yeah, there's a guy at USC actually here in Los Angeles named Skip Rizzo, and he's doing a lot of very, very well documented research into the treating of PTSD with virtual reality and exposure therapy, and the results are really, really, really good. It's definitely been proven to help diminish symptoms and help people cope with the trauma that they've been through. And he's been doing a lot of work with veterans and with soldiers, and they actually have immersive environments that mimic Afghanistan or mimic Iraq, so that the soldiers, the veterans, can go back and sort of face their trauma, and they can face their fear head on. And by being exposed to that, it actually minimizes your reaction to it. It sort of desensitizes us, if you will. So with that anxiety and trauma issue with virtual reality, as we just talked about, it's being used as therapeutic uses quite a bit. So on the other hand, again, playing devil's advocate, on the other hand, can we perhaps talk about how some virtual experiences, there might be a capacity, there might be potential to actually perhaps cause anxiety or perhaps cause trauma?
Yeah. No, I think I think this is one area where the data we have isn't conclusive fully in terms of, we're doing research into the wellness benefits, and we don't have enough data at the moment to say how it might be able to harm people. But I think if we know that, movies can really cause people fear and distress, imagine having, some sort of horror experience where you're in the middle of it. Those are the ones that, for me, quite frankly, are just too much. They are, I played video games my whole life. I absolutely love them. But having a monster like with 2 inches away from your face. Additionally, like we've seen some really interesting things from different areas. But one recent example was at Oculus Connect 2, where they Epic debuted the Bullet Train demo, which is it's basically the Matrix, where you're riding a train, you get off, and you get into this main foyer, and all these guys are shooting bullets at you. You can stop time, grab a bullet, and throw it back at people. It's really awesome. But it was the first experience that I'd had of picking up a virtual gun with a controller, emulating a gun, and shooting people. And they were warning people, if you have PTSD or you suffer from, these sorts of symptoms, don't try this. And I think for the first time ever, I always kind of thought it was in the abstract, but when I had a chance to shoot virtual people, it became very real. So I think it's a genuine concern, and I think it's something that we'll have to continue to research and explore and be careful of. I think content creators need to be very cautious of what they're doing and what they're creating and what they're putting out there.
I was reading an article as well on somebody mentioned it earlier in the comments. I think it was Peekaboo, about surgery. So you can get visual and physical feedback while practicing surgery using VR. I thought, how great is that concept? Because you can use simulations, right? But getting a visual and physical feedback using VR. So you have this junior surgeon who's fresh out of university. You can get 100 hours of VR experience, more or less replicating the real thing. Yeah. I'd rather have him or her do surgery on me than somebody that's just used a simulator, right? I think that training and education is probably an area where sky's the limit. That's an area that I can certainly see having huge growth and potential.
Completely.
Yeah, it's being used in a lot of different ways to train surgeons and help, and it's supplemental training, of course. Supplementally train surgeons, nurses, and when you think about it, first-year medical students don't have access to cadavers to test on and be trained on. Cadavers are very expensive, and it's a weird business. So this kind of gives that access virtually to first-year medical students. So they get kind of a jump on that process far sooner than they would be able to in real life.
One cool use case of that I've seen too is it's going back to the surgery example, but actually filming real surgeons doing very delicate procedures that may be rare. And so, by having the ability to view it from their point of view, to see how deftly they kind of do, their skill, I think it's just to your point, there may be situations where they come up so rarely that having the ability to even virtually experience that could be invaluable.
We're talking about a lot of good stuff that's going on in virtual reality. They're doing good things. Medical world, and what you're doing with meditation and relaxation and health and wellness. Where or how, perhaps, do you think that we should be concentrating our energy in order to do the most good in virtual reality and augmented reality?
I think it goes back to the point of simply as creators, I think we have a responsibility in this first wave. Like, I can't remember a time where ever since I've been born, outside of we saw the internet, but that formed over, 15 years. And we didn't have quite the ability we do now, but like movies, books, they were all completely defined. So I think as creators, we have the ability to help kind of define genres and this medium in a different way. And so I think we also have a responsibility to do that in a way that is compassionate and caring, and that maybe takes this stuff that we don't value as much. For example, the violence, and we try to kind of at least minimize it or make it work for VR in a way that is not as jarring as it is. So I think I think all that responsibility falls on the creator and the content that they're looking to spend their time on.
And that just made me think of something, Malia. It's not very PC, but I'm going to ask the question anyway.
I love that.
So, the porn industry. Now, surely this is going to be a huge space for them, right?
Listen, there are two spaces. There are two spaces that are making money right now, and it's branded content and it's pornography.
Completely.
Exactly, right. So do you have any companies approaching you in the adult industry? How do you do that? How do you work with them?
Yeah.
Is it going to take over virtual reality? I can imagine it being a big thing. Like Snapchat in the early days was just teenagers sending like whatever pics to each other.
Yeah, it was interesting because every time I think that's how you can tell when a technology gets ready for mainstream is when people are willing to buy porn on it. So about a year ago, we got approached by a few different companies to start expanding in that area. And so for us, like with Cubicle Ninjas, it just wasn't a good fit for our business. It's like, as much as we love money and we want to help build cool things, like that's one area that we it's best for us to kind of stay away from. But in terms of growth, I mean, that I think anybody who sees this for $99, and is like, and is curious, I think it's going to be a huge growth potential in the next year. So if the whole meditation thing fails, at least we have an environment. So.
Brilliant.
To that note, I'm actually going to have a woman on who is an adult entertainment star. And she was a star in real life quite, I don't know how many years ago, but she is now producing adult content in the space, and I'm really fascinated to see what she has to say, because again, those are the two places that people are making money in virtual reality right now, and it's pornography and branded content. And pornography has always been a pusher, always been a driver of adoption in terms of technology. And so this is no different.
And I think it goes back to that framing conversation again. Pornography right now has a certain connotation, and it's almost like this completely not real thing. It's this hyper sexualized kind of experience. Well, with VR, will we accept that? Can we redefine those boundaries? Can we make it something that's more open and honest for all parties involved? Does it have to be so sensationalized? And those are things that are like, it sounds like silly, but like we can really remap it for this medium to be closer to something that is more respectable and more something that everyday people won't feel so bad about, admitting they've experienced. So
I can just see it right now. I can imagine a 15-year-old deep, just not leaving the bedroom, basically. This is bad news. I'm like,
yes,
this could be really bad.
Yes,
People would never have gone down to the tennis courts. It would have been a really bad time as a teenager.
I saw this amazing reaction video of people trying. We've completely derailed the topic now, Josh. I apologize.
I had to bring it out.
All good.
There's this video of people. There's a reaction video of people trying virtual reality porn for the first time. It's amazing. This video is so funny to watch and hear everything that people are saying, their expression after they take the goggles off. It's incredible. And I'll make sure to find that and tweet it out so everyone can enjoy that for themselves. But back to kind of doing good stuff and doing stuff that is really, really focused in health and wellness.
Bring it back in.
Yeah, bring it back in. Trying to reel it back. Once you open that Pandora's box.
Exactly.
Everyone's all excited in the comments now.
Yeah.
Comments flowing out. Yeah.
So Rubik came in, and I see that it says audio only. Can you hear us, Rubik?
I can, yeah.
Would you mind pressing refresh, unless you just have bad audio or a bad signal, because we see audio only right now.
I might not have my webcam ready. I can try to...
It's all good. If you don't have a webcam, I say go ahead and ask away. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hi, Josh. I just wanted to know, we talked about porn, and porn is definitely can be put into the relaxation kind of things. In a way, some people you watch pornography for relaxation. And do you think that some apps will be created with porn used as like a relaxation app, but with the porn side, or do you think it's always going to be either relaxation or just porn?
Yeah, I think that's a really cool question. Honestly, I think you might be a few steps ahead. I think people right now are kind of creating experiences that maybe either have been in science fiction or ones that kind of they've seen in other media. But yeah, absolutely, why not? Like, I'd be curious about the porn/meditation relaxation app. Will hospitals have that?
Now, right?
Yeah, will hospitals have it? I don't know. I think it's a curious question. I think what's cool about Oculus and the other Vive and all these other kind of contenders in the space is they're more open. People can build apps like that. It may not be on the store, but they'll at least be out there and people allowing them to experiment that concept.
Mm-hmm.
On the Oculus store, Palmer Luckey, the CEO of Oculus, is a little bit famous for saying that we're not vetting the content. And so content that perhaps cannot get on the iOS store, perhaps cannot get on Google Play, will be able to perhaps be in the Oculus store. So that kind of hands-off vetting the content. What do you think about that, Josh?
It seems like in the past year, it seems like a lot of that has kind of changed. And one of the things that they've started to do is they're now starting to curate. And so they've got little sections of area. So their store, it looks like they're curating fairly aggressively with Gear VR. We don't know what Oculus is going to look like, but with Gear VR. But then they have this new concept of, and I think it's even called concepts, where they let people release things, but they're not going to be as stringent with them. So it is kind of look like they're starting to put the walls up to, at least in the beginning, to that sort of of content. Then there's also the ability for you to sideload content into things like Gear VR. So it things like a year ago that was the case, but they're starting to shift in a more Apple-like manner. Yeah.
So when you're designing these experiences in virtual reality, when you're deciding them to be meditative experiences, how do you use sound to enhance this? I know that sound design is incredibly important to presence in virtual reality, or the sense that you're actually there. So sound design is huge, and the use of sound is enormous. How did you implement anything with sound, and how did you approach that?
Yeah, so what we found is we've done actually, we haven't done like official studies, but we've tested quite a bit. In the past year, we kind of did a roadshow where we ran across the country, tested it in all these groups. I think we've ran 8,000 or 9,000 people in person through these experiences. So it's kind of crazy. But what we did is a certain chunk of those, we ran them without sound. And what we learned was sound is at least 50% of the experience, like at least from just a quick guess. So partially, we want to use real-world sounds that are 3D positional, so they actually feel like they're coming from the area. So one example is you're on the side of a cliff and water is racing across the side and it's splashing up. So we want the actual sound to come from those spaces. And another point is just making sure that they have the same kind of resonance, and so that like if you're in a cave, that audio echoes around and that all of the sounds kind of bounce off each other. So sound design for VR is essential, and I think people think about the visuals a lot when they talk about VR, but sounds the secret ingredient to make it really pop.
Tachi is coming in here. Tachi, hello! Thank you for popping in.
Tachi.
Thank you. I just have a question. And I asked it, but I'm going to ask it here about the nature of human interaction because of Oculus, because of virtual reality. What do you think that this is doing to our human interaction?
That's an awesome question. From my point of view, I think if we took a look at like 20 years ago and we said that each of us are going to have this little device in our pockets that is going to allow us to talk to anybody at any time, and it's kind of like magic, and we spend more of our time doing this than we do like having conversations, we'd think that sounds like some sort of dystopian, horrible future. But we know that like we're communicating more than ever. Like we're having this conversation. We never would have had this conversation, or Molly and I would have never met, via Twitter or these other spaces. So I think that different mediums allow us to communicate in different ways. And so, we tend to kind of think, oh, this is just going to shut us off from the world. Whereas I think the most powerful VR experiences I've had are virtual ones that just happen to be in VR. So, and Rubrik is, Rubik, he works with the AltSpace team. And what they're doing is they actually are building effectively a 3D, they're building the metaverse. And so, which is 3D avatars that we can walk through space, have conversations with each other. And so I think I've had a few conversations with Rubik in that exact space. So we met. He lives out in France. We've met. We've had conversations before, and then we walk away. So I think it's only going to enhance and allow us to communicate better without the removal of these huge distances that we have in a better way.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. Another thing about that, I think there are so many ways in which we're going to be able to bring the distance closer. And so the implications and the potential for collaboration between teams across the world will be enormous. So Deep is in the UK. I'm in Los Angeles. Josh is in Chicago. Tachi, where are you?
Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, so we kind of have not all the corners of the world, but we kind of have a nice little spread here. And this is a way that technology is kind of bringing us together right now. And so with workspace capabilities, you can actually meet in the same virtual room, see the same virtual screens, and collaborate with people in a virtual face-to-face. And that kind of collaboration is going to be enormous. And I think augmented reality is going to be a big winner in that category.
Wow.
And I think, Malia, this is actually a hot topic as well. So that's a really good question, because sometimes you do feel a bit overwhelmed, right, with tech, with your phone constantly on, with notifications popping up all the time, that sometimes you do have less time with the people around you. Right now, my girlfriend's sitting here right in front of me. I'm focusing on you guys, right? But it's true. It's down to how we manage it as well. And I think that's an area, it's going to be a really interesting area, and how we manage our phones, our notifications, virtual reality as well. If it is a part of our life day to day, it's how much you interact with it and how much you use it, and knowing when to switch off as well. And I think completely switching off is also should be a part of our life.
Thank you guys so much.
Oh no, thank you.
Thank you for popping in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think a key part of the whole thing is just building a social context to use these things. Right now, everybody goes, "Oh, you use virtual reality? That's kind of weird." But if you saw somebody in public using it, you'd kind of go, "Ha ha! Look at that guy!" Like, and so I think that, but it's just like with anything, we socially we become comfortable with things the more we are accustomed to it. And so, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, I think it's just going to be commonplace to walk around and say, "Oh yeah, that guy's in VR," and yeah, he might look kind of dopey, but that might be something that becomes more acceptance versus like the Google Glass scenario, where the whole term glass holes is an example of like how they're socially it's still kind of in this awkward stage. So
on that kind of topic, Milia, actually the parent company of Tinder floated today, so I think it's quite current. You guys know Tinder, the dating hookup app. So that'll be a really interesting space, right? Virtual reality dating. That'll be fascinating. Can you imagine a virtual reality Tinder? I think that'll be incredible.
They're working on it
people
right now, Deep. They're working on it as we speak. We have a couple of very practical questions. Someone had a great question. Really, it's like, where do we get this stuff, Josh?
Yeah.
Are you guys putting out, what platforms are you available on? What's the roadmap? Is it available on Android, Apple, mobile, PC powered? Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Awesome question. So right now, the main thing that we have is a demo for the Oculus Rift, the development kit. But within the next 6 months, we're going to be on all the major platforms. So the Oculus Rift, the Gear VR, the HTC Vive will be available on there and in their stores. So you can go in and just press one button and download it. There's more cool information to share, but I cannot. But we're doing everything that we can to make sure that this is available for folks to experience in a seamless way. The other cool thing is the core app itself, it's completely free. There is so we know it's a weird idea. We know that people aren't to kind of risk their money to dive in. So we're letting people kind of experience that and get a teaser and taste before they spend their hard-earned money. So
I think that's a smart idea. Yeah, it's going to be instead of Netflix and chill, it's going to be VR and chill.
Let's hope, yeah.
that's a good one, Tombert. Going back to the specific guided meditation, it's won quite a few awards, even though it's not released. People are really excited about it.
Thanks, yeah. Yeah, it's been crazy. Like I think everybody wants this, but I don't think I think nobody's been willing to kind of spend the time or energy to build it. And so it was one of those things of, well, when there's a market. And the problem is that like that could be 2 years, that could be 5 years. Still a lot of the points here, it could be 20 years, but so there has to be people willing to fail. So we're kind of at that stage in our life as a company where we know how to build this stuff. We can build awesome things. And so we've just tried to build the app we always wanted to. But yeah, our hope is that like the real version, the real version will do even better than our beta kind of demo experience. So we'll see.
Donald Brandt has a good question here, and he wants to know if you're developing any industrial or robotic applications. How relaxed can a robot get you?
I love it. Yeah, no. So at the moment, no. We're working with a few different companies to build custom applications for them, but nothing in the industrial or robotic space. Though that sounds awesome, and I hope we get to. But no, nothing right now.
For another time.
Yeah.
So then So how did you take inspiration from traditional meditation? Because I assume, you had inspiration from your own experience with meditation and the positive impacts of that on your health. How did you take the inspiration from traditional styles of meditation, and then how did you translate that into virtual reality?
Yeah. So I think our first pass was really just taking meditation content and tossing it into a space. And what we've slowly been learning is that's not bad, but it's also not where you need to go. It's kind of like we're in that weird stage where like we're figuring out what the medium is capable of. And so what we've been trying to do is how do we bring the visual side to the meditation? How do we bring the potential interaction to the meditation so that a user feels they have agency and some sort of control? So one of the things that we do is customization is really the key differentiator. So we have the ability where if they tap and for Gear VR, if they tap the side of their head, they can teleport around from space to space. So they can magically find their perfect spot on the beach or in the mountains. Additionally, they can choose to float around. A lot of people find a lot more comfort in flying through a space and doing things that they couldn't do in reality. Yeah, so we have the ability for you to fly through, and we have these preset paths. Another thing is a lot of control in terms of ability for them to control what's the perfect space for them. So do they want a lot of animals? Do they want it to be rainy? Do they want it to be sunset? They can choose those sorts of things and turn them on, off, and on. And then finally, we have a whole series of meditations that are visually focused. And so it's not just you sitting in an environment, kind of listening to audio, walking through an audio. It's actually using the visual system. And so one example of that is like text. Like we have text that appears. And so you can choose like positive reinforcement and subliminal text. And so what happens is the text flashes through at such a fast speed that you might be picking up on those things, but they're positive attributes. So you'll be like, happy, excited, beautiful, all these sorts of things. You may not know it, but at the end of the day, you're picking up some of that. So what can we do? Additionally, we have a concept called filters. So you can turn on a filter and see the world through wireframes or in another magic way. And so all those sorts of things, we kind of let a user customize their experience to be something that they couldn't have so affordably, but also one that they could never have in the real world.
That sounds so cool. Sign me up, dude.
So you mentioned you mentioned this a couple of times, and I kind of wanted you to expound upon this idea of agency. So what is agency? And then could you kind of elaborate that in the context of watching versus experiencing?
I think there's a huge debate in the VR community if VR video is considered VR, and I think a lot of people's I think it goes back to that point of agency. Agency is the act of feeling like you have some control or autonomy over what you're doing and interacting with. When I'm in a natural environment, I have agency over everything, so it's natural for me to like pick up a pen and throw it across the room if I wanted to, but I don't because I know it will work. But in VR, I have that ability too, and so basically what we try to do is give people controls when they matter and try to take away the controls that don't matter. For a meditation app, that becomes really weird because you kind of want to almost take away almost any control so that they don't have so much to play with. Because people who get really bored quickly are just going to teleport around all the time and be like, this is boring. But so we have to find that right balance. So we give them things that they can control, that they feel is fun, but it doesn't detract from having a positive, relaxing experience. Which has been absolutely difficult.
There are a lot of moving parts, it sounds like.
Yeah.
From the world of virtual reality, what is out there right now, the content that's out there, what are some of your favorite virtual experiences that you've had up to this point? Where should we be looking?
Yeah. So I would check out if anybody here has a Samsung phone. Okay, I should say I'm an iOS guy. And I'm a Mac guy. I've been this way for 15 years. I came from a creative background. That's my thing. Only VR could have got me to buy a PC, and only VR could have got me to explore the Samsung kind of ecosystem and the Gear VR. If you're looking to get out and get a taste of what this VR thing is, I can't stress enough. Tomorrow, the release of the Gear VR happens. It's probably the coolest event that nobody really knows about. It's not being talked about enough. And so go check out, if you have a Samsung phone, spend $100 and you have access to this. And there's so many cool experiences there that are really interesting. Dread halls, if you want to go get scared to death, is a really beautiful one. Ocean Rift, if you want to go underwater and play with dolphins or sharks, is an amazing one. Titans of Space, where you can go and you can ride a little cart and go through our universe and compare it to other universes, like the size of a sun. All these things, these are things that you can do in a day and go walk into a Best Buy and have a phone, walk into a Best Buy and walk out very, very happy. So that's kind of what for me is really interesting. And the next 6 months, touch controls are going to be launching. And so things like Oculus Touch and the HTC Vive, where you can actually use your hands or some sort of controller to interact with things. Those are my favorite experiences. Interacting with another person, playing tetherball, grabbing blocks, throwing them at each other, that sort of thing is like, it's magic. It really is. It's amazing.
It's cool. Can I just touch on the business side again, Josh? Business owner. So just to clarify, so you think so as a small to medium-sized business owner, the best thing that I could do and maybe get involved in the whole VR space is create some content around VR. Maybe give out some of the, I've heard of the Google Card VR things, right? Whatever they're called. So is it something like that, or is it just some content and then perhaps offering an experience on virtual reality to my customers? Bear in mind, I have an e-commerce and internet business.
I think that's one area that there's really no clear winner in right now. But I think shopping in e-commerce through VR is going to be gigantic. We've built some prototypes for customers and kind of help roll them out where, for example, you get to customize things. So let's say you're building a car. You can go inside, you can change all the colors. You can go in and adjust your, what type of interior. You can give yourself a spoiler and you can drive around the block with it. And I think those are areas where are really cool. So yeah, I would absolutely recommend for any business to explore it if they have the time and money. That's the big problem, is there's no WordPress of VR right now. There's no easy press a button to do it, which is why VR video has been so successful, is because you just need a camera and you can capture it. So if you can get over that fairly significant hurdle, then absolutely do it, because to Malia's point, you can, hundreds of thousands of people will be there curious and are looking for content. There's 16 million Google Cardboards out there right now. Through this Christmas, they'll probably sell a couple million more just to be safe. And so, you're looking at an audience which is, huge, and considering it's a year and a half in, it's almost as big as the PlayStation 4's audience. So.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that gives context.
Yeah, 100,000 people said, yes, I want to live in a Lexus billboard. That's enormously powerful. That's enormously powerful.
And that's
so that kind
They
of
must are some really weird people.
honestly, it's cool though.
Yeah.
It is very cool.
And scary. I mean, as creators, you want to make sure that you build content that's not too far. But a good example is like Cardboard. If that's just downloads, then you have people sharing that with their friend. Like, you got to check this out. And like, you share 2 or 3 people. That's so powerful. You'll remember the first time you had a VR ad. So.
Absolutely.
It kind of feels a bit like when YouTube was in its very early days in its infancy, and then business owners like, do I spend the time and money to invest in this, or maybe in 3 years' time when it actually becomes something? But I think, like you say, experimenting with it, trying it, testing it out, just getting to know it first of all. You don't have to spend too much money, like you said, $99, right? I think just getting to know it was probably a good idea. So when you have got the budget for it, and as it does start to roll, then you kind of know how to use it, and you can jump in and have a strategy to get.
I think a lot of people are blind because it didn't work once, and they're saying, "Well, it's not going to work again."
That's
and then they're like, "You know what? VR didn't work."
I think that's a big thing. That is a big. It's thing. Like, as a business owner myself, that's one of my reservations. I'm like, I've seen this before. Let's speak to somebody who knows. So when Malia invited me on, I said, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because being a business owner myself, I want to know. I played around with Meerkat and Periscope and really up to Twitter followers, had some really good interactions there, and saw how it affected my business with YouTube as well, and into all the social media platforms. And obviously with VR, I'm very interested to see how it goes from a business perspective, and also just just to experience it.
And just to chime in from my point of view, like when we build apps for VR experiences for our customers, they've never seen anything like this before. You know, an example, like the experiences we've built and then they roll out at a trade show, they're used to trying to give away a tchotchke or t-shirt. And it's a really hard thing for them to do. By the end of the trade show, you have a bag full of garbage that mostly goes into, you know, a landfill. And so giving people an experience, the average time for a line just to get access to the commercial is about 40 minutes long. So it's like, imagine where people get excited. They're so
That's
excited.
the line.
Yeah,
That's the line to experience the commercial.
Exactly. It's
like,
and then people see a line and they get in line for the line because they think the line's really important.
And people are talking
That's
about
exactly
the line.
it. Yeah.
And I just thought of something because I'm always racking my brains about where can I put my space, and I do some consulting for small businesses as well. So instantly, I just thought at Christmas time, I get my top 100 customers. I make a list of them. We do something special for them, whether it's gifts or whatever. Right, we spend a bit of money on those customers, and instantly, I just thought, well, how cool would that be? Receiving from a health and wellness company some kind of created content, maybe the Google Cardboard for them to experience some kind of content. People are going to be talking about it. It's going to create a social buzz, even if it's 100 customers, 1,000 customers. I can just see that creating a real buzz and just creating some real cool PR for your company, but also just giving back to the people that give you your bread.
Exactly. Yeah. We were working with a couple.
It's like the thank you economy all over.
It really is.
That's the kind of angle.
Yeah, and it's a thank you economy where you get to put people in a cool experience. Like, you know, put them in a race car, put them, you know, going out into space, put them in something that they couldn't experience. Like, I think you're right. It's like it's the gift of an experience. How much is that worth? Like.
Absolutely. This
that was beautiful. It's so cheesy.
It's super cheesy. Yeah, it's totally true.
It's a gift and
cheesy and true.
So when we're talking about making experiences that people will enjoy, I have a cardboard headset that is branded to the band 360 music video. So I volunteered to sit in this music video for 3 or 4 minutes or however long it was. This band would not have the number of fans that it has now without what they have done, which is being very early adopters into 360 video and using it for their musical content. And then Donald Brandt has another good question here about that 360 content. Do you make any 360 content? And maybe you could even explain briefly kind of what 360 content is.
I was going to ask exactly the same question. That's a very good question.
It's a really good question. So thank you, Donald, for the thought. Like, so absolutely. Our team has built pretty much every type of VR application out there. So we've explored and built prototypes in web. We've done quite a bit with video. And so 360 video is kind of like, there's a debate. Is it true VR or is it a stepping stone? And so really what it is they take cameras and they put them all over a sphere, or, you know, dependent on the quality, you can have like 10, 20, 50 cameras. There's some which are by Google now, which are absolutely nuts. But they record from all these different directions. And then you piece it together into a 360 sphere of video content. And so a good example is the band. You could also do spaces. You could also, you know, go up in a hot air balloon. So there's so many different elements there. So not only do we film 360 content, but we also help kind of produce a mixture of 360 video with computer graphics. And so, you know, if you're racing a car down the street, you know, does the car break apart and can you see the engine moving in real time? That's the sort of stuff you can do. And what's rad about 360 video is that it works with YouTube right now, and it works with Facebook right now. And so those are both platforms that marketers feel really comfortable with. So you can have a VR experience that just so happens to have, you know, these more tangible in ROI that they might be able to you know, prescribe to it right now. So.
I'm laughing at Donald's question now, and I completely forgot about what I was just about to say. He said he's sitting naked on a beach in the Bahamas right now. It is nice and warm. And I got so derailed. I got the train. I'm back on the train. So with that being said, okay, so when people are saying, is this second wave of virtual reality going to work? It didn't work in the 90s. Why is it going to work now? What you just said two enormous companies that are now offering 360 video and functionality. Facebook owns Oculus, and Google, which owns YouTube. Do you think those enormous companies have any kind of vested interest in making sure that this technology takes off?
Huge. And we've seen with Google, Facebook, and then almost every player has a horse in the game. We can look at Sony, they have PlayStation, we have HTC, they have the Vive. So all these different companies have a huge interest in making sure this works. And I think the difference between 360 video, or if we look at 3D, and a lot of people say 3D. Well, look, 3D was like, people go, 3D didn't work. They tried to force it on us. It wasn't that great, all these things. I agree. I hated 3D. The reason we're exploring VR is because when you experience it, when you really do experience modern VR, you go, holy crap, I want this. Not, I have to buy this, or it's forced on me. And so I think I think the playing field's different. I also think that there's a bunch of toolkits now that didn't exist back in the day. Like if we look at old, we actually have a couple books from 1990s VR here, and they come with discs that are like this big, and they're filled with like a couple of sample programs. Like GitHub and the ability for you to press a button and download a code library, it just didn't exist at the time. And those kind of revolutions, like the ability for corporations to sponsor it, the ability for the game engines to be there, those are gigantic and are allowing this revolution to happen.
Absolutely. So I'm going to wrap up with one question. What is your ultimate hope for humanity with virtual reality and augmented reality? It's a tiny question.
A bit lighthearted.
Yeah. And then on
lighthearted note.
Yeah. I will say, I'll kind of copy off someone's paper and say, and a few people are saying this. Chris Milk's saying this. Tipitat is saying this, in that VR is often being called the empathy machine. And I think it's really true. If we take a look at, movies, I'm watching a person through a third person perspective. But if I read a book, oftentimes I can be that person. But there's never really been a medium that puts me in someone's shoes and gives me a taste of what their real world is like. And so that's my hope, is that, that reporting virtually, that me being in the middle of Paris right now, walking through the streets and understanding what that horror is like firsthand, I think is something that would change it. Or in Syria, or all these other things. I think those can help us have empathy. Or, so there's all these different cases. I think my hope is that VR becomes this platform for social good and change.
I love it.
Malia, my hope is that it becomes just like the holodeck in Star Trek. Do you remember that? In Star Trek, they have the holodeck and they can just switch it on, go wherever they want to and experience what they want.
That exists now, though. Yeah, that's right.
There you go.
Yeah,
we have a holodeck now.
Yeah, you can do it. It's here.
The future is here. So thank you so much, everyone who joined. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. Deep, thank you so much for guest co-hosting.
Thank you very much.
And Josh, thank you so much for coming on and letting us pick your brain and sharing what awesome things you're doing in virtual reality.
Well,
I really appreciate it. So to wrap up, where can we find more about Josh Farkas?
So feel free to check out at Joshua Farkas on Twitter. That's kind of my personal feed. And then if you're interested more about the app that we're doing, it's called Guided Meditation VR. And if you go to guidedmeditationvr.com, you can kind of dive in and get a good understanding and overview of kind of what we're doing and where we're going. So.
Amazing.